Good morning. This is Kim with www.embody-light.com. And I'll leave my website linked in the description. I do readings, energy healing, all kinds of work. Basically, energy repatterning using a lot of different modalities: hypnotherapy, um, energy healing, hands of light, and Reiki. I do sound healing, all kinds of different modalities. So please check it out. I have appointments available, some. And so I haven't made many videos lately. The holidays came and went, and I was busy with that. And then I just been focusing on family stuff. So, and then I work part-time as well, so that takes my time in another job. So the subject of today's video was a viewer had written a question asking if I could expand more on Atlantis. So this is what I'm going to be doing. But in order to understand Atlantis, this is going to be probably a two-part video. There's some basic information we have to cover first. First, there's going to be three societies that I'm going to cover that I have some knowledge of, either through research or my own memories, and then some of this comes up in dream time too. So the three civilizations I'm going to speak of are Mu, Lemuria, and Atlantis. Lemuria and Atlantis kind of coexisted for a while together, and Mu was earlier on. I know that we have been genetically modified. We're on like the seventh version of humans right now, and I'm going to talk about all that. But these three societies all ended by the evil controllers on the planet because they were light societies. And so the dark side wanted to take over. I will explain more on that as we go on. So anyways, these three societies were advanced. They were stellar societies. They had spacecraft coming and going. There were 36 to 38 different types of beings living on the planet, coexisting simultaneously and getting along. So one of the things I want to talk about before we get started was this planet was formed or terraformed by an ancient alien race, a builder race. And during the terraforming and the early civilizations, a lot of people who were star seeds, either celestial or cosmic, started bringing their energy into the planet in different ways. We came in either, if you were one of these beings, you came in either as ether, water, minerals, or plant life. And I know in my own memories, when I'm meditating, I will see this pine tree on a beautiful mountainous scene with, snowy mountains, just breathtaking. And my actual good friend Jay, who is my twin flame, also is a pine tree right next to me. So that was one of the ways we started bringing our energy onto the planet to kind of ground it in, to help us to make this connection. Because you have to remember, this is when heaven and earth merged. Heaven lowered to the earth. And the most of the beings were used to being in spirit. Now, I don't have a whole lot of information about Mu, but I know that they were a luminous society, and it was for the people of Mu, it was about learning how to merge with and maintain a physical body, because a spirit, to get into a physical body, it's not easy. It feels, I actually have memories of this in this lifetime. It feels very heavy and dense, and it's just not pleasant. So once the planet was terraformed, the natural inhabitants of the planet that were actually formed from the clay of the earth were the Terrans. And now these are like baby souls, you could call them. They haven't had lifetimes on other planets, only on Earth, and they've had probably far fewer lifetimes than most of the star seeds who have had multiple lifetimes on multiple different planets. So that's pretty much the extent. Oh, there is a little bit more. I'm going out of sequence a little bit that I do know about Mu. One of the things that I do remember is that, and this, I saw this in dreams and in meditations. Some of the beings were bringing in plant life from different planets and getting it to start here. Mushroom spores were brought in from other planets. They're all alien. I guess you could call it that. And then I specifically saw them working on blueberry plants. We all know blueberries have a lot of medicinal qualities. And what I saw was they were initially trying to get them to take in a swamp or bog-like setting, and they actually do better in the woods. So I actually saw them working on them. And it was also kind of a fairy-like realm. In this, we were semi-luminous, but we had connections to all of the dimensions. I should rephrase that. 5 through 12 was what most people were used to. And a dimension is your level of, is a location. Density is your level of consciousness. So these beings came from 5 to 12. I'm just going to call it levels so I don't keep screwing up the words. They came from 5 to 12, both in location and probably consciousness, but more of them had a higher consciousness. But they didn't have the 1 through 3. They were having difficulty merging into the physical body. And so that's what the first seeding, I'm going to call it, that I'm talking about, Mu, was about. I don't have a whole lot of information except for that it was destroyed by the evildoers on this planet that wanted power and control. So, and the other thing, it was, a lot of credit's been given to the Anunnaki for creating the human body. That was not the race that actually created it. It was a feline race that came in and tinkered with the genetics and got humanity going, not the Anunnaki. So then the next thing I'm going to talk about is the Anunnakis. The Anunnakis are an ancient alien race, extraterrestrial. Their planet is Nibiru, and it's a Battlestar planet. It makes a very wide rotation. They were at some point given the position of being commander of all these different planets and over Earth. But in their rotation, it's 365,000 years till they come back in our area. When they came back in our area, now these are fourth density beings, so they could come on to the planet, but they had, they weren't necessarily fourth, they were fourth dimensional, not density, that's a consciousness. And so they could easily come onto the planet, easier than other groups. So when they'd come in our area, they discovered in the beginning that we had gold. Well, their planet, the atmosphere around it had been destroyed in a nuclear war in the heavens somewheres, and so they needed our gold to protect their atmosphere. So they came to Earth and they started mining for gold. And in the beginning, they had other Anunnaki mining, and what happened was they could not handle the extreme temperatures of the Earth and the inner Earth mining for gold, and they mutinied, and some of them even took their own lives to get out of this, what they were doing. So whether this was by permission, because I've heard two different stories, I don't think it was by permission, or they just decided to do it. They created workers, which they called the Lulu. And what they did was the indigenous people, which were very young and immature, possibly even more animalistic back then, what they did was they said that upgraded their genetics. The way they upgraded their genetics was they mated with them. And so they had these hybrid Anunnaki Terran people here. And that was who they had working the mines. So as time went on, they had the indigenous people of this planet working in the mines, and they were much larger than other humans. The first thing I want to tell you is there's a couple aspects of this. When they got together with the human women and created an offspring, the Anunnaki were much larger, and they lived for hundreds and thousands of years. The other thing is their bodies are a little bit metallic-like, and what I found from my guides is the reason for that is because over time their bodies adapted because of the radiation and heat from the sun as they're making their orbit around all these other planets. So it was not comfortable for these women, and many of them just left their body when it was happening. It was not comfortable for these women, and the Anunnaki were much larger. Many women died in childbirth. And so it was portrayed that the Anunnaki were our gods. They had a supreme commander named Anu, and they assumed that he was the god because they had devices, probably something similar to our cell phones, where they could get information off of, because they were an advanced civilization. And they had abilities that the other people did not have because they were such an old race. Well, so the people assumed that they were gods. And the only thing the Anunnaki really did, from what I could see, on the earth is, take our resources, and they introduced a bloodline that was less than desirable, and I will explain that in a minute. But they were just responsible for upgrading the genetic sum to make the worker bees, but they did not create the bodies. This Anu is not the god of our souls. That is creator source. They only had something to do with the genetics of the planet, but they claim themselves to be God, and many people worship them. And so from this Anunnaki bloodline, we had Anu, who was a supreme commander, married a reptilian royal princess. And the result of that marriage was Enki, one of the sons, who was a Draco-reptilian Anunnaki hybrid. And Anu had another son with a celestial humanoid, and that was Enlil. So you had these two half-brothers. And eventually Anu divided the earth up into segments and gave them each their specific areas. So out of the line of Enki, who had the reptilian mother, the reptilian genetics were introduced. The other line was the humanoid celestial line. That was the line of Enlil. Well, that was the line that Yeshua and many of the heroes, I guess you could call it that, of history, actually incarnated into that line. The other line, they had all kinds of demonic people and reptilians incarnating into, because you can have a reptilian soul or a celestial soul. There are many different kinds of beings that God created. And if you had a reptilian soul, it's much easier to incarnate into a lifetime where you have at least one of your parents as a reptilian. I don't even know if a reptilian could be born through two celestial humanoids, because the genetics, I don't know how that would work. If that reptilian soul would come in, wouldn't even think that it would want to. And so out of the line of Enki eventually came Marduk, who was a very high percentage of Draco-reptilian. And Marduk has been responsible. I believe he's dead now in 2016, but lived for many, many years, was responsible for a lot of the pain and the trauma that went on the earth. Now, like if we look at our royal families and our political leaders and stuff, most of them have reptilian genetics, and I'm pretty sure a lot of them have reptilian souls as well. So one of the things I was going to talk about is that in all of these societies, we had people that had very high levels of consciousness, up to 12 density, and they lived very, very long lives. I'm going to suggest that you read the book, Jane Roberts' Oversoul 7. And I also have an Oversoul video that I'll link in here that you can watch. That'll give you an idea. But when you have a 12 density awareness, you have knowledge, and you're connected to all these other areas that you're existing in, because only a fragment of your soul drops into the human experience. The rest stays on the other side as your higher self, your oversoul, all of that. So if you're a 12th density being, you would have awareness of all those other things. You might be aware that in your 12th dimensional self, you sit on an angelic council. Or maybe if you're more of a cosmic person, maybe it's a Pleiadian council or something. I don't know, because I'm not a cosmic person and I can't really speak to that. You would communicate telepathically with everyone. And then the Terrans would have only had the awareness of the first, second, and third density, or dimension, and density as consciousness. And so these other beings looked like they were so much more advanced. That's how they mistook them for gods. You could do all kinds of things. You could walk into a person's field and they would have a spontaneous remission or healing. You would be communicating with other star beings. We had spaceships that came and went in all of these societies. And so what they were learning to do in Mu was merge all of that spiritual knowledge with the physical body, and it was difficult for them to hold that form. That's why they were so luminous. And the other thing I want to tell you, anyone that's going to that is able to maintain 12th density awareness or be a 12th dimensional person, they have to have their hairline connected at all times. And I have a video on that I will link as well. That's kind of lost knowledge. So these beings were very, very powerful as compared to what the Terrans believed. I mean, what the Terrans understood, because they did not yet they had not grown to that, to be able to have that ability. If you're going to be communicating telepathically, you have to have like a 6th density consciousness. So they were luminous, peaceful, coexisted. They had fairies, they had dolphin people. I mean, they had so many different types of people. They had giants. And as it was with the other societies, they were eventually overtaken, whether it was a war, a flood, a fire, I don't know, but that civilization ended. And then the next two that followed were Lemuria and Atlantis. And so I'm going to end this video, and I actually recorded this yesterday. This is like my 3rd take. And I'm going to come back and talk on the next video. I'll release them a couple days apart about Lemuria and Atlantis. When I did it yesterday, it was over an hour, and I'd be talking about one society, and then I'd remember something about the other society. So I've written it out a little clearer, and it should be a little more understandable. So I'm going to cut this off for now. I'll be back with the next video. I love you all. Have a blessed day. And remember to hit the like and subscribe button. and visit my website at www.embody-light.com. Bye-bye for now.